Good morning, friends. Mark Holmes here with my buddy Cowboy Joe Boo, as well as Joe Bear in the house. And as always, I want to thank you all for watching, commenting, subscribing, and being part of the Joe Boo Sports Report. Without you guys, you know it does not work without you guys. So let's get over to business. Let's wake up the football gods here. Stephen Jones had a lot to say yesterday at the Senior Bowl. This weekend is the Senior Bowl. In fact, this is the anniversary of me seeing Dak Prescott for the very first time at the Senior Bowl. I remember because the Dallas Cowboys, of course, failing like they always did, ended up being the coaches for the Senior Bowl. And, of course, we had Jason Garrett and crew there, and everybody was talking about Carson Wentz. So I watched the Senior Bowl, and I watched Carson Wentz, and I was like, okay. And then I saw Dak Prescott, and I was kind of like, Dak played better than Carson Wentz. He ended up getting the most valuable player for the Senior Bowl. And I did a video about Dak Prescott being the perfect quarterback for the Cowboys. Nobody watched it at that time. Nobody cared. My channel only had a couple hundred viewers. Some of you are long haulers that have been here. Leave a comment in there for me, because shout out to you guys. It wasn't until Tony Romo got hurt that anybody watched that video or my channel. And so I have to give all credits to Dak Prescott becoming a Dallas Cowboy, the reason why I'm sitting here as it is now. But the Senior Bowl, where you get an opportunity to see the future stars, you start making decisions on who you want to have come there. So, of course, the Cowboys organization is there to watch the future stars and start getting an idea of the players that they want to draft. But we're still dealing with other issues that are here, because we know about the Miami Dolphins situation with Brian Flores suing not just the New York Giants, but all of the NFL for their hiring practices, basically saying the Rooney Rule is a crock of shit, that he was already coming to do an interview 2 days after they had already decided who they were going to hire, just so they could check off the box. We'll get to that part a little bit later here. But Stephen Jones recognizes that it's possible that Miami could hire Kellen Moore. I think this is the one shot, one opportunity that's really left for them, and maybe that'll be the case. Lord knows their owner will pay you to lose to get better draft picks. We'll see if that happens or not. But an interesting thing was what Stephen Jones said if Kellen Moore leaves. The great news is Mike is an offensive football coach. He calls plays for Super Bowl teams and championship teams. I'll give you a little more safety net versus where we are on the defensive side of the ball. It gives you a little more safety net versus where we are on the defensive side of the ball. So what he's saying is, hey, no problem if we lose Kellen Moore. We're not losing anything because we have Mike McCarthy. The question I have is this. Hypothetically, we lose Kellen Moore. Do the Dallas Cowboys run the same offense that they're currently running, or do we switch over to a West Coast offense? I know that's kind of like Cowboy players are rolling over in their graves because of the San Francisco 49ers and their West Coast offense, and how that was the beginning of the end of Tom Landry's era because of the West Coast offense, and we would run that. But if you're going to have Mike McCarthy running the offense, are you going to stick with Jason Garrett's offense? Or do we change offenses? Second part of that statement right there, if I'm digging a little deeper, because I always advise you, read between the lines and dig a little bit deeper. If it's great news for Mike McCarthy to call the plays because he has called plays for Super Bowl teams and championship teams, versus Kellen Moore, who has one and done playoff teams, wouldn't it behoove you to say that probably Mike McCarthy, since he has called plays for championship and Super Bowl teams, doesn't it behoove you to go ahead and say, Mike McCarthy, since it's your nuts in the sling right now, for you to call those? And after the press conference where I literally did a 180 on Mike McCarthy, where he said, well, the installer of the plays makes the calls, basically passing the buck onto Kellen Moore, and now it's your assets in the sling. Wouldn't it behoove you to be the one to make the calls that either you sink or swim on your own, as opposed to putting it in somebody else's hands? To me, that says that maybe Mike McCarthy should be calling the plays as opposed to Kellen Moore. This statement kind of puts more questions in my mind, like the original press conference that we had before. Now, who knows if Kellen Moore gets the job with the Miami Dolphins or not, in which case then you're bringing him back, and I don't think that they'll fire him. But you can evolve what you're doing. You can always say, well, Mike McCarthy's going to call the plays. It's not the first time that we've taken play calling away from somebody. They took it away from Jason Garrett because it just wasn't working. So we don't know where that's going to go. The other thing that was really interesting is he acknowledged the fact that they have a cap situation. We already know that they're trying to restructure Dak Prescott's contract, and you can restructure some and get some relief. But the reality is we have 21 free agents. Some we don't need. But those 21 players, those spots have to be filled. And there's places where we need upgrades, from linebacker. You could look at cornerback. You could look at center. You could look at guard. You could look at tackle. You may even look at running back and tight end. And so you can't hold on to everybody and say, we're just going to run it back like Tampa Bay did. We can't. There's guys like Randy Gregory who probably command $15, $16 million on the open market. You don't have money to pay them. You've got guys like D-Law that are $27 million cap hit, or Zeke Elliott that's $18 million, or Amari Cooper that's a $22. You've got to decide which of these guys are worthy of paying the big salaries, and you're going to have to let some go. And these are going to be tough decisions. And so I'm starting today with I wanted to use a soundbite from the group The Clash. Should I stay or should I go? But unfortunately, the YouTube police will get you on that one. I tried sampling it for 5 seconds, but it just wouldn't work. So couldn't use that. But we're going to start going through each of the free agents as well as some of the contracts that maybe the Cowboys have to look at and say, maybe we got to cut this guy, and the ramifications on that. So we're going to start that today. I've already got the first one recorded. We're going to start with Randy Gregory, but we'll go through all of the free agents and get to it. Now, the final thing we're going to deal with this morning is the fallout of Brian Flores going to the NFL. And I just want to listen to a little bit of a different take on this. The thing about hearing this whole situation is it really bothers me hearing that an owner was going to pay his coach to tank, and when he didn't, got pissed. That just is bad. That's a bad look for the NFL. It's just awful. And the whole hiring process is bullshit. So let's listen to what they have to say.
Very successful. Like, you look at what he did with what he inherited with the Dolphins and what he turned them into. Former head coach of the Miami Dolphins filed a class action lawsuit against the New York Football Giants and the NFL, claiming racial discrimination. He says he can prove that the Giants interviewed him as a Rooney Rule show after deciding to hire Brian Daboll. I mean, this is one of the issues with the Rooney Rule that we you can just think about and understand could easily happen, and we've actually seen where a team knows who they want to hire, but because that candidate is not African American and they want to check off the Rooney Rule, they make a big show of interviewing so-called minority candidate in order to fulfill the rule, but in fact they'd already made their decision, and that appears to be the case here. That's at least what Flores is alleging, guys, because he has a text from Patriots head coach Bill Belichick congratulating Flores on getting hired by the Giants. Well, Flores hadn't interviewed yet. So you say, well, what does that do? Well, in fact, the series of texts, one of them, the final one, says, sorry, I bleeped this up. I double-checked and misread the text. I think they're naming Brian Daboll. I'm sorry about that. So, in other words, Bill Belichick thought he was texting Brian Daboll saying congratulations on the hire. Turns out he was texting Brian Flores. He must have stuff in his phone under the first name and not the last name, right? So the two Brians are right there. Thought he was texting Brian Flores and kind of spilled the beans. So that's the setup. Key and Harry, as two accomplished and intelligent former African-American NFL players, I am very interested in hearing your points of view on this subject. Key, let me start with you.
Well, let me first start off by saying the Bill Belichick situation, let's be clear. Bill wasn't in cahoots with the New York Giants. Bill Belichick has information because he's dialed into the entire National Football League.
There you go, yeah.
And I believe Bill would have done the same thing had it actually been Brian Flores that he coached with for 10 years. But in this situation, it just so happened he read the wrong name, did his texting, and was like, oops. And so when you start there, I just want to be clear because I don't want people to think that Coach Belichick is like in cahoots with the Giants.
His mustache somewhere. Yeah. Ain't like that.
So
no.
It's not like that. He just happened to text the wrong person, and because he got the information because he's dialed into the National Football League. Now, on the larger thing, the moment that the Giants made the decision to hire Joe Shane from the Buffalo Bills, first, second, third, or fifth interview, I knew that Brian Flores was just there because of the color of his skin. I knew that. Anybody that understands the National Football League and the way that they're trying to do things from a copycat league standpoint, we all knew that it wasn't going to be Leslie Frazier because Leslie Frazier essentially does not develop quarterbacks on the offensive side of the ball. And what is it, the one thing that the Giants desperately need is to figure out Daniel Jones. So Brian Daboll was the guy all along. The sad part and the disrespectful part is they made a decision before the second interview of Brian Flores. He interviewed originally on Zoom and then was going to have an in-person interview. He thought in his heart of hearts that he would have a real opportunity because that's what he was being sold. So imagine sitting in a room knowing that they've already made a decision, even though they haven't publicly announced it, but privately have told people they made a decision, but they still need to meet a certain quota by interviewing and making it look and sound as though you have a real opportunity when they're just wasting your time. Now, the fact that he has receipts that come via Bill Belichick is something explosive in my opinion. I am not a legal expert or a lawyer. The only thing I can do is look at it on the surface as what it is. You look at the same hiring practice the San Francisco 49ers made with John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan at a time that they partnered up an interview with Josh McDaniel and Louis Riddick. But did they really want to hire Louis Riddick as a general manager? Or was that just something to do until they got to Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, my former teammate? Or you look at most recently with the Las Vegas Raiders and what they've decided to do. Pair two guys from the New England Patriots to take over their organization. Did anybody else have a real shot and a chance? And so that is the copycat way of doing things. You look at the Buffalo Bills and the success they've had with my good friend Brandon Beane at the general manager spot, and Sean McDermott at the head coaching spot.
Mm-hmm.
They came together from Carolina. So, Harry, when you look at these things, on the surface, it's very disappointing.
Okay, well, that's enough of that case. And I almost forgot, because, it's Washington football team, about the Washington football team. I forgot that they're supposed to be revealing the new name, but apparently 5 hours ago, this actually happened here. This was a helicopter that zoomed in, and inside of FedEx Field, you could see Commanders right there. That is officially, I guess, going to be the name. I think that is the funniest thing that I have ever seen. That is just ridiculous. I think football team was better. I'm going to have to get on with my son Rio on the name of the Washington football team. That is horrendous. Wow. Anyway, I've got work to go ahead and do. I need to go out for a walk with the wife here because we're trying to get in better shape. Shout out to all the new subscribers to the Cooking and Tailgating with Joe Boo. I've gotten back on keto. I'm down almost 6 pounds in a little over a week, and I'm going to try and drop 30 pounds before next season. So with that being said, we're going to keep you up to speed. When we officially get the name of the Washington football team, we will definitely have a good laugh. I'm Mark Holmes, and you know how we roll.
Mark Holmes here, and as always, I want to thank you all for watching, commenting, subscribing, and being part of the Joe Boo Sports Report.
Just one hell of a job, and all